Hey everyone, my name is Matt. Welcome to my shop. Today is December 1st and this is my weekly shop update. Can't believe it's already December. That went pretty quick. I have been up to a few things, I suppose. So this past week I made I made a few of these Minnesota cutout cutting boards. I know, more cutting boards. But I made two of them. I made two different sizes. I made a small one and then a large one, shaped like Minnesota. I got these templates actually. I traded some lumber for them. So I got the templates for these and I just grabbed some scrap wood and I made some blanks to make a few of these. I made one of these larger ones and then 5 of these smaller ones. But yeah, quick little project. Very wasteful though. These, it's very, very wasteful. The state of Minnesota does not nest very well together. So really the best, if you have a rectangular blank, the best thing you can really do is kind of nest them like this, and you can see all the waste there in the middle. So I don't know, maybe I'll figure out some other way of doing these. Maybe, I don't know, we'll see. So this upcoming weekend, this Saturday, I am going to be the spotlight guest on the Woodworkers Weekend Shop Talk. If you haven't already checked that show out, you probably should. It's a lot of fun. It's a good show. Last week was Drew Short from Rockin' H Woodshop, and I think Izzy Swan was on the week before that. But I'll leave a link to their show down in the description if you want to check out some of the earlier episodes. So I got some time here in the shop, I think it was yesterday, and I spent most of the time working on the appliques for the secretary. Let me just kind of zoom out so you can see that a little better. Wrong way. There we go. So I did a few things here. Up top you can see I made the cutouts for the arch top of the doors. I also made the cutouts here on the top piece, which is where there's going to be a fan carving recessed in here. If I take off the face frame, the other thing I did in here is I added all of the dados for every single one of the cubbyhole dividers. So there are 3 cubbyhole dividers on each side here, and then there are 7 along the top. So that's a total of 26 dado cuts, and they all need to line up from side to side or from top to bottom. So what I like to do today is just kind of talk a little bit about how I got all of these dados aligned when the pieces that they're going into are different lengths and they're not similar at all. Obviously getting dados aligned in like the 2 side pieces are a lot easier because they're exactly the same and they can be positioned in the same place on each board. But if you have a piece like this side and this vertical divider, they're different lengths and the dados are positioned at different places from part to part. So the challenging thing with cutting all these dados in here is that they all need to be perfectly parallel to one another, or at least the 2 pairs. Each pair needs to be perfectly parallel to one another. Now there's a couple things that could happen as you're cutting these things that you want to mitigate against. So let's say this is your shelf or your piece that you're going to put into the dados. Now as long as those things are parallel, it doesn't really matter. Technically you want this thing to be square to the opening in this direction, but really if it's tilted this way or this way, that's not going to cause you any problems with your construction. It becomes a problem if it's tilted this way or this way. That's where the alignment part comes in. Or even worse. Let's say you have, where's my other piece of wood? Even worse is going to be if your 2 dados are not aligned at all and they're actually more like this. This is going to put a twist into your piece that you're trying to put into that dado, and it's not going to go together very easily, or probably look very nice either, depending on how bad that twist is. So you absolutely don't want that to happen. So let me show you how I cut all these. So I've removed the top piece, and you're looking here at the top shelf, I guess you can call it. And you'll see that I have this divided out into 8 compartments with 7 dividers. I did a little math and I cut a scrap piece of wood that I can just reference against the right side of the case and then ride my router base up against that piece of wood, and I can cut my first dado. Now one thing you want to keep in mind with your router, or at least mine, is that the base is actually offset. That's why I have this piece of tape here actually. That's the blue side. This is the nothing side. One side is further from the bit than the other. So in my case, I was using the not blue side, and I would rest that up against my block, and I'd rub my dado with the router. Now for the next one, that's where the fun part starts. You can use a stick. Okay, it's not going to fit. And you can insert a spacer or just a filler piece into the dado, put your spacer on again, and then run your next dado all the way down. And you just keep going all the way down until you get to the end. Okay, so that's fine. That makes sense, but here's the fun part, or here's the cool part though, is when you get your top piece. Which way does this go? This is the front. When I went back to do my top piece, I removed this from the case so I had a little more room to work and just put this one in. And I referenced off the same side. So I would have had this flipped over, so I would have started on this end down here. And it'd be exactly the same thing. Use your piece of wood to make your first cut, use your stick to fill the dado, and have a place for your piece of wood, your scrap piece to ride up against, and then just make all your cuts all the way down. This way, these stay completely consistent from top to bottom, and you really don't have to worry about it being out of alignment, because all these dados are perfectly parallel to the case side. So the key to doing dados this way is really just to make sure you keep those reference surfaces just figured out. I use a piece of chalk. I just mark it with a piece of chalk so I know where to start my cuts from. Because like in the case of this piece I just showed you, when it's right side up and you're cutting the dados in that top shelf, the reference surface is the right side, which is on the right side of the case. If you flip it upside down, so you cut the dados in the bottom of the top piece, then the reference surface is still the right side, but it's on the left side of the work. So just keep that in mind, especially with this. If there's any error in this, your spacer, it's going to show up in the last divided area. And in my case, the cumulative error was almost 1/8 of an inch, which isn't really going to be that noticeable, and I'm perfectly happy with that. So that means that the last compartment is 1/8 of an inch wider than all the other ones. So you can see that 1/8 of an inch error, if I had referenced off the wrong side, for instance, that puts all of my dados in the wrong spot by a little bit each time, so that they actually don't line up. If that happened, your dados would line up in a way that would cause your dividers to be like this. This is exaggerated, but they'd be on an angle instead of being perpendicular. Now I just have to cut all of the dividers to actually go into all those dados. That's 13 dividers, and they all need to be lapped over the shelf pieces like I showed last week. So that's going to probably be most of what I'm going to be able to do this week, and then they all need to be profiled on the front edge as well. So a lot of work to do with those things still, so I'm guessing that's probably where I'll be at next week, is just finishing up those. So I still have to cut the dados for the bottom area where the drawers are going to go, but those will be the last bits of joinery on the actual upper case, and then it always becomes, I guess, embellishment from there. Yeah, and the doors. I gotta make some doors. Some big doors. Those are going to be cool. I got some really cool pieces of wood for that, so I'm excited to share that in the upcoming weeks. Alright, so that's all I have for this week. Thank you as always for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments about anything I talked about today or anything here in my shop, please feel free to leave me a comment. I always appreciate those, and of course I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next time, happy woodworking.